Hello, art friends, Evolutionary, EEARTS, Heart's Home Family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, we are going to talk a little bit about some Vedic astrology charts other than the natal chart that can give you a deeper insight into the soul's journey. Because, again, this is, this is for most of us, it's not our first go round.
Right, this is stuff that can help us kind of figure out if we're in and going in the right direction. Are we on the right path? It can give some answers, and with answers, sometimes you find peace. So that's nice.
Yeah, and ultimately, in all this chaos that we see right now, it's great to take a breath of fresh air and get a little peace, because we get all wrapped up in the drama of this one particular life that we are living at this moment, but typically is just one amongst many. So Vedic astrology is a little bit different from Western astrology in that it does take the tilt of the earth into account, and it has many different charts. Though typically when somebody gets their chart done, you're talking about, you're obviously your natal chart.
Right. Usually it's that's one thing that I studied. It was the natal chart, but there's like 14 different charts. There's a lot to go on, a lot to learn. It is very much like another language, and I can understand those that have learned Western astrology. They take a look at Vedic astrology and they're like, I don't want to do this. And then I look at Western astrology, I'm like, I don't want to do this. So people choose their own path, but it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. I like Vedic astrology because it does take the tilt of the earth. That's 23.5 degrees. And when we're dealing with degrees and planets, sometimes that makes a really big difference.
Could make an enormous difference when you think, we're talking about little degrees, and then you're talking 23 and a half degrees. And, not that this is going to be all about Vedic astrology, because we're just starting with the Vedic astrology side of things. Some believe that Western astrology was actually brought back from India via Alexander the Great when he spent time in India. And, that it was taken from it. As we see, as far as the traditions go, the Vedic traditions, in my opinion, and many other scholars, are the oldest. They are older even than the Sumerian, in my opinion. I think we are looking at knowledge that's given to us from the silver and the golden age, not just the bronze.
When we look at Vedic astrology and Western astrology, we got to ask ourselves why. We look at Washington, D.C., and when you learn that they decided to lay the very first brick to build up in Washington, D.C. based on Vedic astrology, not Western astrology, you got to ask, you got to ask yourself what's going on in the background there. But then there's also the mystery of the zodiac, and that is where they don't exactly know where it comes from. They just know it did split off Western, and it's just different. So there's so many pieces of astrology that are still missing. And piece by piece, it's getting put back together, as people come across different scriptures and they translate them, we get more information. But it's a long path.
And again, ultimately, so much of the wisdom that we have, when we look to all the Vedic wisdom, where they come from? They came from the rishis, the wise men. How did the wise men get it? They went into meditation, and they were given this. And when you even look to the Bible, it's thought that it's channeling is what it is. Oh, God spoke to these people. Well, again, when we go within, that's when we get the answers. And we are living in one tiny little neighborhood, just a tiny, tiny little neighborhood. And of course, in our this particular life's journey of the soul, our world, in a way, revolves around us. It's all from our perspective. That's the way it was meant to be. Each one of us have a unique perspective. And so, so often people would say, "What's your sign?" Well, I'm a Gemini, or I'm a Scorpio, or I'm a Libra. And in the West, they're pretty much talking about sun sign. And again, you have the ascendant sign having more importance in the Vedic world, and then there's the moon sign, the ascendant, and then we got your Rahu Ketu axis is super important, because that tells you where you've been and where you're going, what is going to be important, what's not going to be important. The planets, as Cindy was saying, where's your Saturn? What do you have in the same house together? And that's just this particular incarnation. And we jump in, we try to time it, and we try to jump in at a certain point in time that's going to give us the best opportunity to live out this life's main purpose. And there will be more than one purpose. And again, so many of us in this world, we get waylaid and we find that we're not living the original purpose, because the system kind of takes us and it dangles things in front of us that lead us astray, and we find ourselves lost in the woods, so to speak, and maybe not even having a clue. What the heck am I here for? What am I supposed to do with this life? Well, look to your chart. That will tell you, because this will tell you when you jumped in. Now, okay, you might say things like, well, what if I had a cesarean birth? What if they induced me?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is all pre-planned in some way, shape, or form. And when you decide to come in, it's when, some people think it's the moment the baby is in the room with oxygen. And some people say, well, it's when they take their first breath. That can be, seconds apart. But it's however you entered this world, and that doesn't really matter. There's purpose in everything. Somebody could be a preemie because they needed to jump in at that certain time. So they decided, I'm out of here at 6 months, man. So then they're born, and that's very relevant. You don't take 3 months, put it on top of that, and that's their chart. No, it's whenever that baby decides, I need out of here.
So I hope this is a good time to bring up something you've been talking about, and the importance of coming out of the birth canal. And the birth canal is a stargate.
It is. We women, we have a womb, and I've always referred to the womb as a stargate, and I never really understood the relevance of that until recently. And I hope I don't trigger anyone or make anyone sad, but you guys, we've seen a lot of information coming out where they're going to create life forms in these machines, and the significance of coming through a womb is huge. It's that source spark, it's that source energy, and that's the blessing. We are all blessed to come through a womb from our mothers, to be brought into this world. And I sadly, I feel a difference when it comes to putting embryo in something other than a womb. It just doesn't feel right. And I think that's important.
Well, okay, so now you're triggering thoughts in my mind of different myths, because like when we look to some of the creation myths, and they talk about creating the first humans, they talk about making them in different ways, and failing. And they found that they had to impregnate goddesses in order to have the humans make it. So it's like what you're saying there is reflected in these myths.
Mm-hmm. Right. It is, and it's just that sometimes we don't put things together for a very long time. Like I would know things and talk about things when I was 5 years old, and I'm just now coming to realize, oh, okay, well, that's what that meant, because I am reading something in the past life. And that's what's fun about a chart is we were doing one the other day, and Mike blurts out, well, this is the progression of the soul. And I thought, wow, that's such a good way to put it, because I put a few different charts together, and we go from your past life into your birth chart to see what did you bring from past life into this life, and then what can we expect to go on from this life moving forward. So it was a lot of fun to do that. I have been doing that for a little while, and if I've already done your chart, it's really simple for me to go in and take a look at the other charts, and we can do that a different way. But you got to understand this Vedic astrology, for me, I already have learning disabilities, so I learn differently, and this is something that I have come across to read somebody's progression and see, well, what has been resolved, because people are so busy, they don't know their focus, they don't have time to focus. And sometimes when you're told, okay, well, this is what's going on, it's like and you get this breath of fresh air, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's great, this is the path that I go on. And sometimes it feels really good. Not everyone needs that validation or confirmation. Some people already feel very strong in where they're at, and that is great, that's wonderful, that's got to feel fantastic. But a lot of us still struggle, where am I, who am I, what am I supposed to be doing? And it's just nice to have some type of an outline and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, in our journey of the soul, each life can be viewed as, maybe a chapter, and maybe even less than a chapter, really, if we keep stepping back farther. It's one of those cases of when we're in this, we can't see things clearly, but that's exactly how it's supposed to be. There's a purposeful amnesia of sorts that's over us, so we can have a fully immersed experience. And when we go and we're out of the body, then we can go ahead and kind of, we have a review. I mean, this is what we do. We have a review, and then we decide what we need to work on. Like, if, for instance, I didn't get on my path, I know I wouldn't have made it past 50. I would have ended up exiting very early. And, then I probably would have been figuring, how do I do these things and make plans to come back at the most opportune time. It's interesting, too, because the souls that are not in body have a different viewpoint from those that are in body. Now, when we look to many of the esoteric traditions, some of the practices are all about getting out of your body. And whether we're talking Buddhist monks, Taoist monks, whether we're talking, more like Gnosticism or students of the Kabbalah and Hermeticism and all these different traditions, there's the understanding that the incarnation is just simply a temporary manifestation, and there's a bigger purpose. This is school, so you could also view each life as being a different grade in some ways. You go from kindergarten, now you go in the first grade, now you go in the second grade. Hey, next year we go to junior high, if that's what they call it, or middle school, I think some call it. And then you go to high school, and then you graduate, and then you're going, maybe you're going to go do graduate studies. Maybe you're going to branch out after you've done your graduate studies and you got your PhD in this, and you're going to come back and do it all over again. And, thanks to the guides, I've gotten some insight into that personally, because I had the feeling I keep doing things over from just slightly different perspectives, and did get a confirmation on that. So that's, again, something that we really have to dedicate our time and effort to doing that. And my first meditations were really focused on getting out of the body. And that goes back to a very, very early age. I was a weird little kid meditating in my closet at 7 and 8 years old. And my son, same way. He was sitting under a tree meditating at 7 and 8. So we're each unique beings, and we're unique souls. And, there can be some congruency, and there should be a congruency from one chapter of the soul to another. And the D12 is the one that kind of gives you a glimpse into past life. But she also will look at the D9 and D10. and get a clue as to the bigger scope of things.
Right. And with those ones, those are the ones that I use along with the birth chart to see what people's karma is, to see where you're going to have trouble, what things are going to come easy to you. It is really just a big story about your life and bringing you understanding. It's like, what do you need to work on? Saturn is really important in our chart because that dictates our karma. You know, what what do we have to do in this life? Not like Rahu. Rahu is what you want to do. Saturn is what you have to do. But they're all very unique and interesting. And you know, this is the charts that I work with. These are what my charts look like. So if you were to have a session with us, then I would email you this, which it's a lot like looking at Chinese writing, but you know, it's still yours and it's your natal chart, and it will give you a lot of information if you can just learn the basics. Like learning where is your moon in your natal chart can give you so much more information than anything else. You know, you can dive into that so deep and get hours and hours and hours of study just knowing where your moon sits. And that's the mind in Vedic astrology. Wherever that moon is, that's how people can center themselves. If the moon is sitting in your fourth house, that's something where your mind is always on the home. So if you get kind of thrown off your center, you would want to redirect your energy and put it into your home, put it into making your home comfortable, put it into working on your garden. Anything having to do with making the home a better place is going to help you find your center. And it's even going to help you heal through whatever traumas kind of threw you off your center.
Absolutely. And I find it fascinating, like when we're going through a chart with somebody and you see, you know, that they perhaps, you know, don't have a huge interest in or can't get themselves started on a regular spiritual practice, something along those lines, then you go check their D12 and you see, well, what is that telling you? Well, it looks, when you look at that as well as some of the others, that, you know, the last life was all about being a spiritual master, and so it's like, well, this isn't, you're not intending to redo it. You know, it's purposeful in that, you know, why come back and have the same exact experience time and time again? No, we got other things we want to work on.
And you know, there is no time, there's no beginning, and there's no end. So each life, I know as humans in the human mind, we put a lot of emphasis in, you know, where do things begin and where do things end? And that's because we are looking at things in linear fashion, and we're supposed to, but not every life is like that. And yes, so many times people are of a spiritual nature, and you can look at their past life chart and see, it's like, okay, wow, well, you taught this stuff and you expanded in stuff, and this is where your planets were at the time of death. So you brought all of this knowledge and information with you. And you can look at the karma too, like what karma, you know, is there family karma? Is there karma with the mom, karma with dad that you have to resolve in this life? A lot of times that will jump out to me, but the information that's most important for you to help you along in this life, that's the information that comes up and jumps out and that we get to talk about, because there's always a lot of questions about, you know, people's lives and their life journey and their partner and, you know, everything that's happened, and it helps sort things out and make sense of them.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one thing to like touch on Saturn letting go of us.
Yes.
You know, because that's so important, you know, because again, I don't know if we could say that we give ourselves a break in a sense after a certain point of time. You know, the whole Vedic tradition is really a fascinating one, because when we get past a certain age, we literally start to prepare to leave here. We literally do. We start getting ourselves ready spiritually to leave. And, you know, we do it in such a way traditionally that is very gentle. It's a shift. And, you know, what's that shift look like? Well, it's giving more and more attention to the spiritual side of things, more and more meditative practice, more and more of living a completely spiritual life, that taking the priority as, a gentle easing out of one life into another makes for a more speedy time period afterwards. Even though time is really, not a thing on that side, it still is on this side, perception-wise, when we're in it. And, that is truly a blessing. And, I have dear friends that are very much like that are, everything is centered around their spiritual journey together. And, they daily are with each other and preparing and easing their way towards the exit point in this life. And, why I'm bringing this up is because it's all about facing things without that fear. And it's, while we're not supposed to know everything, it's totally okay to understand that, and this is coming from the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says to Arjuna, and he's afraid because there's a big battle coming, and, he might lose his life. And Krishna says to him, don't you know what the difference is between you and I? And it's that I remember all my lives. And now, of course, that's an exceptional case. But it is something that's possible in the golden age for sure. And, you don't, but you are not your body. You're not sure that you're not your body. You have these doubts about, the fact that you're going to go on. And whereas Krishna has none of those doubts. He knows. He's like, I know. I'm just going to step out of this suit and I still am me. I'm just not in the suit anymore. The body is a vehicle. So that brings a certain peace of mind. And it also is like a mental process, as we do have these different bodies. We have the physical body. We have the etheric body. There's actually more than one layer to that etheric body. There is literally the etheric template from which the physical body is created. So when people say my maker, it's really you. You are your maker. And again, that's such a distortion from everything we're taught in the West. As I look at a beautiful cardinal coming and landing next to us here. So, yeah, it's perfectly okay to know that we go on. We don't die. We don't face eternal torment. Our consciousness just shifts perspective. And as I was talking about with the bodies, there's these different layers, emotional, mental. There's so many different layers. Some of the very best psychics can see 14, 15, 16 layers to the aura. Well, these are all different aspects. You could look at them as different densities, dimensions to our being. We are very, very much more than we understand. And even the greatest amongst us, as far as philosophers, yogis, etc., we still only have this faint understanding of just how vast we are, because we're peaks in the waves of the consciousness ocean that's out there.
Mm-hmm. All rivers lead to the same ocean. We are all one, but we are all here deliberately to have an illusion that we are separate and to view ourselves as separate. So that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. We came here to be individuals. And, if people right now who are born through the womb, this is our godhood. This is our godhood. We are directly from source. And we see a lot of the controllers kind of mention, we are gods, but guess what? We're all gods. And I do believe that they are quite frightened of us because they know what we are made of. And I think there's beings, that claim to have created us. I think they altered us, but they altered the vehicle. Right. They altered the vehicle. But right now, I think they're looking at a situation where we can go above and beyond them. And could you imagine how scary that must be if we do go above and beyond, because it's within our capability?
And it's a natural progression of things. I think that without what they're doing right now, because what they're doing right now is really they keep failing in capturing people. And when I say people, I mean souls. They're trying to capture souls, and they keep failing. And again, time and time again, people ascend up beyond where these beings can reach, and it's just a natural progression of things. They're stuck. They're really truly stuck, and we are the ones that are actually free, as Cindy was saying. So just to go back on what I was trying to get a little point across to. Saturn will release its grip on us. So when we talk about Saturn having its grip, it is related to the purpose, why you come in when you do come in. And then at some point in time, it's almost like you have a little bit more freedom to, follow things without the restraint of Saturn.
Right. We look at Saturn and where that's at in a chart, and Saturn is going to teach you some kind of a lesson, where depending on what house it's sitting in, and usually that's the lesson. And once we give to that lesson, it's like Saturn will release its grip. And one particular conjunction I see with some people is Saturn and Ketu together. And when those two are together, somebody usually is struggling with their purpose. They want to know, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And the trick is to pull yourself back into the moment and focus on what you're doing now. And then Saturn releases its grip of that nagging thing, what's my purpose? But you see how you give in to Saturn, and you give Saturn what Saturn wants, and that's basically the lesson you came here to learn. So it's nothing bad. I know Saturn gets a bad rap in Western astrology, but in Vedic astrology, it's a great teacher. It's a wonderful teacher. So we also look at Saturn in transits, which I'm working on. Depending on where Saturn's at, when Saturn goes through that house, depending on how much attention you have given to that house, well, that's how things are going to turn out in your life. So if you haven't been very responsible in a certain house, well, Saturn, when it goes through that house, there's going to be things that crop up that say, hey, you didn't finish. These things need your attention. So also that's a really nice tool to know and understand. But I would really love to get into the orbs for a minute, because there's orbs.
Yeah, what I want to do is we're going long, so I'm going to break it into more than one video. So we'll follow that in like part 2, if it's okay, because I'm just worried about losing these as we go deep. Okay. So we're like 27 minutes in. And these type of discussions are so easy for Cindy and me. I mean, this is really at our core and our heart. And so we cover the news and we cover everything happening from a spiritual perspective. But the reality is the spiritual side of things is really, it's us. That's what we are all about completely. And, again, what I was getting to with Saturn is Saturn returns. Because again, at certain points in time in your life, then you'll have new opportunities come about. There will be times where you could really change things up, and go off and explore maybe some of the things that really makes your soul soar, so to speak. But there's things that we have planned for ourselves, main purposes why we come in when we do for each life. But then the souls themselves are of a certain essence, and that's understanding the higher self. And we'll get into that more in the follow-up video. But touching on Saturn returns just briefly.
Saturn returns are so very important, and there's some things that you should know when coming up on a Saturn return, and your first one is going to be when you're right around 28, and that's when you discover that you are going to go through this life, and you are going to have to leave the body. You are going to die, so to speak. And sometimes that just forces people to find an understanding, and it forces them to find their purpose in life. And it brings a lot of wisdom, but also brings pain. But again, pain is not a bad thing. It's just a really good teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, at some point in time, then we get this little bit of a extra creative freedom, and that's what the ending part of life should be all about. And when you look to these matrilinear societies that are out there, the matriarchal societies, that who are the teachers? Who are the ones that are with the kids? It's the elders. While those in their prime are growing things and doing all the hard, heavy lifting, so to speak, of society. It's the wizened elders that have this bigger understanding that are guiding the little ones and trying to impart some of their wisdom so that they will grow up a little bit wiser with a little bit more understanding. And this is again where society has completely failed, and unfortunately it's a purposeful fail. When they take the elders and they stick them over in certain places and they're not even around the kids, they're not even around the families anymore, and then you have souls that end up passing on in a sterile hospital environment, not next to their loved ones, not in their familiar rooms, their familiar property, land, people around you. Again, this is all unfortunately a very, very purposeful thing, trying to keep souls trapped into a lower vibrational frequency range. But even with all this, they still don't succeed with the majority of souls. The majority of souls, go ahead and they have their life review. They take what they can learn from this life. And, some might not come back here again. Some might jump in a portal, like a Lionsgate portal or a 7-7 portal, and go ahead and incarnate somewhere else, a totally different star system for some totally different experiences. This is, again, part of the bigger scheme of things. And we are so much more than they tell us, so much more. They can't have us know just how powerful we are, because again, we're way beyond what they have limited themselves to become, and that is not who we are. And we will follow up with more info on part 2, part B, and I want to thank you guys again for being part of the family on all 3 channels. Make sure you are subscribed, check in regularly. Anything else you want to add on this one?
No, it feels pretty good.
Okay. As always, guys, if you need to reach us, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com to set up an appointment for energy work, talking to your spirit guides, loved ones that have left the body, your guardian angels, and of course your Vedic astrology charts. Please allow 10 days to 2 weeks typically to get on schedule. Much love, God bless, and namaste.
Namaste.